Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Jay, and welcome back to the official podcast of the internet's own drum and bugle corps, Open Source. We hope you all really enjoyed our first project, Clair de Lune. If you haven't gotten the chance to listen to it yet, it is on our YouTube channel and Facebook page, so please go check it out. Today on the podcast, it is my pleasure to have three very important people with me, the arranging team from Project One. We have Ace, Zoth, and Mathamuse here with us today to talk a bit about their process and inspiration. Why don't you all start off by introducing yourselves and telling us a little bit about your experiences that brought you here to open source. And let's start with Ace.
Hey everyone, glad to be here. I'm Ace, known on the Discord as Ace is Nace, Ace is not Nace, and many variations thereof. I was the project brass arranger for this first project, as well as a member of the mod team, or rather, I am a member of the mod team. I actually marched 2 years with a little corps called the Racine Scouts Drum and Bugle Corps, an open class drum and bugle corps that unfortunately no longer is fielding, from what I understand. In 2013, I was a rookie. I'd never marched before. I never did marching band, and I learned how to play mellophone on the road. And in 2014, I was the mellophone section leader. In 2016, I was marching with the Madison Scouts, but unfortunately, I suffered an injury during spring training, so I had to come off the road. And I spent a season with the 2017 Madison Scouts. I was very fortunate enough to also land a gig teaching BOA band. Where I first started off as a mellophone tech in the Metro Atlanta area, and then quickly advanced to the role of a caption supervisor. But I've had the very fortunate opportunity to teach as well as write for various groups. I'm currently pursuing a music education degree. I'm an older undergraduate, but it is what it is. Making the best out of a situation, especially in regards to the weird time we have going on right now.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Ace. Next up, Zoth, if you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about yourself and what brought you here to open source.
Yeah, absolutely. So primarily, this was a project started on Reddit. It was originally called the Reddit Drum and Bugle Corps at the time. It's since been changed, rebranded from an organizational standpoint as a content provider. But I remember seeing that, and I thought it was just a wonderful opportunity to be a part of, wonderful idea. So I hopped on the Discord server, and it is where it is. I was the battery arranger for Project One. Some of my past experience with the marching arts includes a year of sound sport in a group that is unfortunately defunct, and an A-class WGI group as well. On the side, I'm the assistant director for Redacted High School as well. Wonderful opportunity. It's been very fun to be here and be a part of this and be able to arrange some music that's a little bit different from what I'm used to.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And then finally, we have Mathamuse, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. We have Mathamuse, and if you wouldn't mind doing the same thing, tell us a little bit about yourself and what brought you here.
Hey everyone, you can call me Mathamuse or just Math, or you can try and pronounce any of the various symbols that I use as my Discord name in the server. I spent a year at a drum corps that is now defunct and had somewhat of a negative experience, but I also spent 7 years in total doing marching arts through high school and college. I primarily play piano, but I also have experience in brass, and I was the pit arranger for the first project. I've also done some teaching gigs, but nothing long-term, and I also, in college, self-designed a music theory minor, and I completed that.
Excellent, thank you. That's really cool that you made your own minor there in college.
Yeah, sadly, the department for music at my college didn't really have a good theory track, so I was able to get like one-on-one classes with a bunch of professors, and it really taught me a lot.
That sounds like a wonderful opportunity. Definitely at like smaller colleges where you have the chance to do so.
Oh yeah, 100%. If anyone that's listening ever has the chance to do that, I would recommend doing it.
Absolutely. All right, so I'd like to start out, now that we know a little bit about y'all, I'd like to start out by asking, what was it that made you guys come to choose Clair de Lune as its first piece? Because from what I understand, the first project was not voted on like other things we've done so far, right? It was kind of just selected by the powers that be at that time. So why Clair de Lune?
So it's funny because when the Discord server first started out, there were like 3 or 4 channels, and one of them was a brainstorming channel. Because at the time, at the beginning of the first day, or at the end of the first day rather, that we had the Discord server, we only had about 10 people, maybe less than that. Most of them were on the current mod team. And through that, I distinctly remember, I think it was either Buckeye or Ixta that suggested that we do Clair de Lune, because we wanted to say something about the current state of the world, basically. And we felt that Clair de Lune evoked a certain loneliness. And ultimately, if you look at how drum corps and marching bands at the high achieving level design their shows, they very much have something to say beyond the surface level music. Whether or not that is directly correlated to the original meaning of the music or not, it's very much a case of how can we take this, incorporate other elements of show design, and really make it something special, something that says something provocative about what we want to say. That's my recollection of it. It feels like it was such a long time ago. It was only really about a month ago. That's how we came to Clair de Lune, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm. Do y'all have anything to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So from a production standpoint as well, the choice of song definitely made sense. It allowed us to experience with actively, overlaying MP3s, getting the audio and the video side and the back end of things together, because it was overall a fairly short project, about 2 minutes or so in length. Uh, Everything that we're doing since then has been a test of our capabilities in the aspiration to put out more interesting and more engaging content. But we do believe that this was a wonderful base to stand off of.
Of course, I don't think any of us, like the first 10 people on the server, anticipated how big the project would become. That being said, at the time, we weren't really necessarily considering, like, hey, we want to get it out to this many people. We want to get it out to this many people. We were thinking more along the lines of what would be doable for the group we have currently in terms of skill level, and mostly in terms of ease of production, because we weren't sure where everyone's talents lied. We weren't sure exactly what kind of specialists we had within the group. And so that was a good baseline project for us to begin that process rolling.
Absolutely. So this one is kind of more for Ace, since he wrote the original sketch. But how do you approach arranging a piece like Clair de Lune that's much more gentle and much more peaceful, and take that and make it capital D, capital C drum corps?
I think there's a lot to be said about the art of arranging and how one goes about translating certain things, because that's what arranging really is. Arranging is very much taking something and not just translating it to different instrumentation, but translating it to a different medium. Clair de Lune has quite a recognizable melody. The issue you get into with the marching arts in particular is how metered something is. Because the ultimate reality is, yes, you can have tempo changes, yes, you can play with time to a certain extent with a marching ensemble, but the ultimate goal is that it's legible, it's metered, it can be done in time to some sort of time, and that it can exist outside of the scope of itself in order to be audience pleasing. And even though we aren't necessarily a marching ensemble, quote unquote, we write stuff in the spirit of a marching ensemble. But to answer your original question, I take something like Clair de Lune, and the melody is not the hard part to translate to drum corps. The hard part is taking that melody and, first of all, making it very dynamic. And the original work does that by playing with time a lot. and giving a lot of leeway for the interpretation of the performer. But we don't have that luxury because of the large ensemble setting. So what I did was I took the unique rhythms, I took some interpretations that I really liked. I listened to a lot of recordings of the original work, not necessarily arrangements, even though those do exist. But I took a lot of inspiration from recordings of the original work, see how the performers played with time. And then I tried my best to meter those in a certain way. And if you look at my score and you look at the original score, the rhythms are completely different. In some places anyway. The rhythms are completely different, and that's because I wanted to capture, the little lifts and the little, reductions in tempo that come with a lot of the interpretations, but I wanted to meter those out as best as I could and still have them be strictly in time so that we could have multiple people doing the same thing. That was by far the biggest challenge, and I think that's the thing. That's how I approached it. Was I listened to a lot of interpretations, and I basically tried to make something mathematical out of something that wasn't mathematical, so that it could be accessible to more performers, if that makes sense.
And that makes a whole lot of sense to me. Thank you very much.
Just to add on real quick, I also, it's important to recognize the precedent that this piece has had in the marching arts. There's quite a few corps that have played at numerous high school bands, probably as well. But I know a concern of ACE's was having the arrangement itself need to differentiate itself from those past voicings of the interpretation of the piece itself. And I really would like to commend him on making an arrangement that is unique, different, and fits the scope of our project very well.
Yeah, I think it's quite an achievement in arranging. But no less of an achievement is the work that you, Zoth, and you, Muse, did in translating those sketches that he had into a full percussion part and full front ensemble part. So if each of you would like to talk a little bit about your process for that, and what did that look like?
So, in terms of arranging the battery for the short piece, I think it's important to note that when Ace was writing the original brass parts, he laid out some guidelines through just as sketched up parts, a line of music with just quarter note snare beats where the battery would be placed, and then the underlying chords of the melody for front ensemble stuff. And to actually bring that to light, I'd argue that my interpretation on writing percussion stuff is a bit similar to how Crown post Travis Peterman has been interpreting their music, something that's very rhythmically aligned to what the brass is doing, but prominent enough to add significance to the context of the piece itself, where the placement of the notes are probably the most important thing to recognize.
And then how about you, Math? What do you think about taking that front ensemble sketch and how do you transform that to match the brass in like a similar way?
So, trying to take a sketch from someone else and expanding it isn't really something that I have had much experience in the past doing, so this was really new to me, and it was a lot of fun, because usually a lot of the stuff I do is just I do everything about it. Now, I was kind of lucky with this piece because it was a piano piece, and piano pieces really do translate to front ensemble instruments very well. There wasn't really much that I had to change from the sketch, but I was able to expand on a lot of the thematic ideas that were in Claire Lune, and it was really interesting to try and figure out like how to portray the same ideas as someone else when writing it.
Right. It seems like it's really all about finding that unified vision between all three of you and not just leaning towards one person's ideas, but really kind of melding everyone's ideas together. Would that be accurate?
Yes, 100%. Especially since I wasn't one of the original people in the server, so I didn't know that we were doing Claire de Lune until I was approached to do the arranging for it. So it was very interesting trying to make sure that what I had in my head would line up with what everyone else had in theirs. Right.
Well, thank you guys for all the great work you've done. I think that the piece came out really well, and it would not have been without the efforts of you guys doing that. So thank you guys very much. We're going to move on now to something a little bit more lighthearted. We're gonna go around in a circle, and if each of you had to pick a single drum corps show to be your like number one favorite, which I'm sure all of the listeners are like, no, not just one, but yes, just one. If you had to pick just one show, what would it be, and why is that?
Well, obviously I marched Madison Scouts, so my favorite show is a Scout show. Back when I marched with the Racine Scouts, my rookie year was 2013, and I saw a lot of great shows that year. That was a great year for drum corps. And obviously being an open class corps, one of the great things you get to experience is after every show, you'd get into the audience for free, and you'd get to watch all the drum corps, all the amazing drum corps. And my mellophone section leader at the time said, you have to check out the Madison Scouts. They're so good. They have the same core song as us. They have a lot of the same traditions. You would really like them. And to a certain extent, I actually kind of avoided seeing them for a little bit because he hyped them up so much, and I'm like, they can't be that awesome. Especially, and he told me this right after we had seen Crown in 2013, which is an amazing show in its own right. Obviously, I wasn't an experienced brass player at the time, so coming out of that show, I was like, I didn't know a horn line could do that. I didn't know brass instruments were capable of those things. I think I still feel that way sometimes. But I remember distinctly, it was quarterfinals night. And my mellophone section leader said, you are staying here. Scouts is on next. You're going to watch them. And I was blown away. It was absolutely phenomenal. And I'm not the kind of person, I do believe music moves people. I do believe that. But I'm not the kind of person to be moved very often by media, whether that be movies or TV or music. I'm not moved by media that much. But I bawled like a baby, like a lot of people in that stadium, during that show. And and part of that was because of the content of the show, but part of that was also the whirlwind of a rookie year I had that year. And like I said, the two corps share a core song. And to hear that at the end of that production, things kind of came full circle with me. And up until then, my dream corps had actually been Phantom Regiment. I really wanted to march Phantom. And then after I saw the amount of passion and the beautiful storytelling that was put on the field by the 2013 Madison Scouts, I realized that's where I wanted to go. So to answer the question, my favorite show is the 2013 Madison Scouts. 75 years, Corps of Brothers, 75 years of survival. Yeah.
Awesome. That is an incredible show.
I love that show personally.
Yeah, it is definitely like way up there in my list of top shows. And how about we move on to Zoth? Why don't you talk about your favorite show of all time and why?
So having thought about this for a little bit, I think the summation of just like asking a heavily involved like drum corps fan what is their favorite show, it's going to make their mind spin for the time they're going to think about it, because there's so many different things in this activity that different people are drawn to. Different people have different types of preferences. It's understandable how some shows might be ingrained in other people's minds differently than others. I'd say going back to when I'd marched Sound Sport in the Pittsburgh area, we had performed at a show, and like Ace in Racine, we also got to go up, and because we had performed first before all of the open and world class course had went on, we got to go up into the stands and we got to watch the rest of the show from decent seating. It wasn't high enough where you could see the drill. It wasn't low enough where you'd be, blasted with brass and you couldn't hear everything. It was like a perfect medium, in all honesty. But from the cores there that night, I'd think the show that stuck out to me most, and what is probably still my favorite show, was the Blue Knights 2015 program, which to this date I still think is one of the most interesting shows that has ever been put to the media, one of the most artistically and meticulously crafted products to be put out onto a football field, and the music was just ridiculously fantastic. I couldn't sing praises for any other show more than that one. it blew me away as to what I thought drum corps people were capable of, even with the lineup playing before it, because they were last that night.
Right. Yeah, I've seen some video of that show, and it always is very impressive just how beautiful it really was, and it does speak to me too, for sure. A great show with great source material and excellent execution. And then finally we have Math over here. He's gotten the most time to think about it, so hopefully his answer will be the best one, right?
Yeah, sure. If I could have picked more than one, this would be a lot easier. And I'm struggling to say that this is really far in front of all the other shows that I like, but this one seems to be my favorite, and that would be Bluecoat's 2018 session 44. So now, even though my drum corps experience was in the front ensemble, in high school and college, when I was marching, I was actually on mellophone. And if you look at the Bluecoats show for that year, the mellophone book was insane, and there was just so much of a wonderful warm sound coming out of that section. Especially when you get into the ballad with Sarah, which was outstanding and probably one of the best ballads I've ever heard. That's not even to mention the rest of the entire show and the rest of the sections, who all were just so powerful and so artistic with that show. And in my mind, Session 44 is probably one of the best shows that has been designed and performed throughout all of drum corps history, especially with its use of the multi-instruments for the pit and also the featured vocalist, which I think was probably the only time that a featured vocalist actually worked so far.
I would definitely agree with you on that last point. It used a vocalist in a way where all the other parts of drum corps that we think of as important could still stand out. Like, it never did vocalist instead of brass or instead of percussion. It was always with it in a way that was additive and not subtractive.
Right, and I would completely agree with that, and I think that the Bluecoats that year really were able to show off their power with all the musicality that they do have, and it's just a wonderful show, and I continue to listen to it to this day, so, yeah.
It speaks to the quality of the product that it was only third place at the time.
Of course, and there are plenty of shows that are quite close to how good that show is, but I think that one just is a little bit better than the rest, in my opinion. Although better is probably a bad word for that. It's a little bit more my style, I guess.
Right. I totally get that. And of course, this is not to say that any other shows are not good or not great. I think every single year we could say all the shows are amazing, and because it's really easy to forget just how good every single drum corps is and how hard they work to make those products and how much they believe in those products too. So there are your answers to everyone listening to think about who these people's inspiration and favorite moments from drum corps are. I have one last question for you guys, and this one any of you guys can answer, but especially from the two of you who are mods, Ace and Zoth. Is there anything that you'd like to say about the future of open source and how it fits into this rapidly expanding world of virtual drum corps?
I think what we're doing here is very special, very unique, just because, I mean, we're doing this at zero operating cost, and that's not something a lot of groups can say. And it was organized completely by some very level-headed people, mind you, but all of us who are kind of leading this little project are either educators, former marchers, current marchers, a lot of people from different walks of life that have come together and have said, we want to create music, we want to fill that void that's been left by the cancellation of the 2020 season. But I think what makes us so special is that, number one, this community has been very supportive, very loving of one another. I've made some great friends here already, and that's not something you can say about a lot of online communities, especially performance-based ones, where it's very much a cut and dry, okay, I've turned in my thing, or okay, I've completed my assignment. We're getting a lot of people to do work voluntarily because they love doing it, and that's so crazy to me. And it's such a special place. It really is. If you just take one peek into any of the channels, you'll see someone helping out someone, or you'll see someone giving feedback on something personal in their lives, or you'll see someone complaining about finals, but then everyone's like, "You got this, man. You got this." It's such a cool place, and it's so cool to see everyone just being so supportive of one another, being so loving. In a lot of ways, it reminds me of real drum corps, and not obviously nothing's going to replicate the feeling of being under the summer sun for 90-ish days, but it's something special. And ultimately, I decided I wanted to continue on to world class from open class because of the people involved. And I feel like this is doing a good job of pushing that forward, of continuing on in that spirit. Essentially, that's why that's what I have to say about the future of this drum corps. Is I think it's just going to continue to get better from here. Also, the upcoming music for Project 2 is really good.
Ha 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 ha! If y'all haven't seen our preview for that, please check it out. It is really cool, and I cannot wait to start chopping out some of these parts.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be hard. It's going to be fun. It's going to be rewarding. Zoth, do you have anything to add to that?
I really would like to think that Ace articulated it fairly well. I think from, purely the organizational standpoint that we have to do to organize some of these things, and get a head start on some of the more back-end stuff to deal with the actual fluctuation of the server and some of the issues that are attained in an online forum. It's been going ridiculously well. Like, we've grown about as much as we envisioned our whole capacity would be by the end of the project within the past 2 weeks or so. A net gain of about 300 or so members, at least looking to check out the server itself. And that's not even to say the numerous amounts of people that have actually watched our products or follow us on our social media accounts, where we've got quite a bit to display in addition to these multimedia projects. I think that there's a good saturation of online multi-track projects that are currently happening in the world right now. The fact that it's hosted on a forum server it adds a lot to the inclusivity of everything, because like actual drum corps, we're certainly hoping to emulate the camaraderie that individuals would be experiencing when marching for 3 or 4 months at a time throughout the entirety of the summer. And as I said before, there's certainly no way to replicate that, but everything from everyone involved has certainly shown that it's a wonderful project. It's a rapidly growing project, and it's very unique in the way that the members are concerned about it. They just want to see it grow and expand in a similar capacity to what we have envisioned for the project, and I think that's very special.
I absolutely agree. I think that we have something very unique here, and that's exactly why all of you listening in should join the open source Drum and Bugle Corps. I think that's a great note to end it on, Zoth. Thank you all three of you for your great insights that you provided into our little world here at Open Source. And thank you to all of the listeners out there who are listening to this and who listened to our first project. We are a digital group, right? All of our performances are virtual, but we still wouldn't want to do this without you guys. It wouldn't be possible without all of you who have already listened to our first project. So if you haven't checked it out, make sure you go take a look at our YouTube and Facebook, both of which are Open Source Drum and Bugle Corps. And there you will find our first project and these podcasts. I've been your host, Jay, and on behalf of the Open Source Drum and Bugle Corps, happy practicing, and see you next time.